السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وإليه تسليما جميعا كثيرا. Jazakallah khairan for joining us. My name is Dr. Wajid. I'm the Assistant Secretary General for the Muslim Council of Britain. And today on our webinar, we have two special guests. We have Sister Fatima and Sister Zahra from Amanati. The title of today's event is about disabled Muslims and mosques. What are things that we can learn about the needs of disabled Muslim mosques? And we're asking Amanati to speak to us today, not only because they're an organization that does a lot of good work in the community, but because they've done a special survey, which we want to discuss in a little bit. But before we begin, let's start off by asking our panelists to tell us a little bit about themselves. Sister Zahra and Sister Fatima are the co-founders of Amanati. But if we could start with you, Sister Fatima, if you could tell us a little bit about your story and introduce yourself, that would be wonderful.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Fatima. I started Amanati with a group of friends because I thought there was an importance of sharing the different abilities in our community. I'm a social prescriber by day and I volunteer for Amanati when I can. And it's really important to recognize different abilities in our community. Alhamdulillah, we started Amanati 2 years ago, and I'll hand over to Zahra to continue.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for inviting us. So I'm one of the co-founders. It's not only me and Fatima, by the way. There's more of us, but we're here with you guys today. And I work as a part-time Senko. I also have a background in psychology. I've done a master's in psychology of education. I am also a full-time mother of 2 little boys. So yeah, I'm really passionate about raising awareness within our communities about special needs and disabilities and how we can make our centers more accessible, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. So tell us a little bit about Amanati as an organization. What is Amanati and what is it about?
So we started Amanati just before the COVID pandemic. Alhamdulillah, it was a difficult time to start an organization, but we did recognize that we need this awareness in our community to make sure that everyone feels equal, no matter what ability they have, regardless of whatever ability. And so we would like to empower these special individuals and their families by celebrating their different abilities in our community. That's our vision and our mission, inshallah.
Anything you'd like to add to that, Sister Zahra?
No, I think, this is what we started off when we first all came together. We thought of what we wanted our vision and mission to be, and this really, I think this really speaks a lot about what our work and our values and the kind of change we want to see in the community. We also have a number of goals alongside these, so such as conducting research and collaborating with organizations to try and create the positive change that we want to see.
Jazakallah. But I'm going to press you guys a little bit because there are so many different things that you could have got involved in. You could have been involved in charity work. We need more efforts in that area. There's more efforts needed in politics. There's so many different areas that we need effort in. Why this area? Was there something specifically about this? Did you have experience in this area? I know both of you seem like you have like professional expertise in this area. So maybe that's the reason. I'm just curious.
I think if Fatima, can I go first? Should I go first?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think, my uncle has Down syndrome, and we have a very close relationship, and we've pretty much grown up together. And but his parents just treated him as any other kid, and they would take him out everywhere, in mosques and everywhere. But I know some parents don't do that, and there are a lot of people that don't take their children to Islamic centers and mosques and so on, and it's for an understandable reason. And I hope that throughout this presentation it can become more clear. I also had a friend whose child had autism, and she wasn't really kind of open about it in the community, and that kind of sparked my interest as well. And we got together with a group of ladies, and we all shared this common interest, and we started Amanati. But I think also that, like you said, we could have gone to charity, we could have done loads of other work, but I think this is what is missing in our communities, and this is what is needed. And I think that hopefully the survey results that we share with you today is going to show this.
Jazakallah khairan. Brilliant answer. Sister Fatima, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
I've personally worked with special needs children in the past, and I saw their need for it, and I actually was sitting in a center, Islamic center once, and I saw one of my friend's child just lurking around, not accommodated for. So I thought, if there are organizations already for children to participate in the program, but there is nothing for our special needs children. So that's where the idea was sparked, when I actually saw my friend's son not being accommodated for personally.
Can I just say how inspirational that is to both your sisters and all your other co-founders, because it's one thing to see a gap in the community, a need that's personally affecting you as an individual and try to fill it. But it's another thing to see a gap that's not affecting you as an individual, but it's affecting other people, and then try to fill it. So this is fantastic. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you all. And I hope we have more, that we want more of that attitude. Any gaps, we want to find those gaps and we want to fill them. So Jazakallah khairan. That's fantastic. So what does Amanati do? We've got your vision, we've got your mission. What are the activities? Oh, there you go. Fantastic.
Yeah. Fatima, do you want to go for it?
Yeah, so Amanati has been doing a lot of things in the pandemic. Well, most of our activities have literally been in the pandemic. One of our leaders actually produced a documentary with Ahl Bayt TV called The Untold Story, Autism, The Untold Story, which was inspirational. It did take a long time, but we eventually released it on TV, and now it's on YouTube. We are holding social media campaigns online through our social media pages like Instagram, and Facebook, and LinkedIn. We run workshops for people who are interested in special needs families and children, and accommodating for them. We run a few workshops for ladies who are of Arabic speaking language and are active in our community, to start the conversation in the Arabic language, not only the English language. We also ran a competition for children, no matter what ability they have, just to raise awareness about how to make an inclusive mosque or center in our community. And we are also supporting organizations like MCB, like this event today, by collaborating with them and raising even more awareness in different parts of our network and community. And last but not least, we are speaking to Islamic scholars sometimes and asking them to actually raise the topic in their lectures when they do give a lecture in Jum'ah prayer or other times of lectures. That's what Amanati is up to. And we have loads more coming up. Sorry, Brother Wajid, you're on mute.
Jazakallah khairan. It wouldn't be a Zoom event without one person doing that. So I decided I'd get it over and done with right at the beginning. Jazakallah. So this is so many activities. I mean, you could spend like a whole half an hour talking about each one of those and go into the depth. And I honestly, I'm just, one of the reasons why I feel so passionately about this, the Disabled Muslims COVID recovery group is last month we had Anahuna, this week we got Amanati, and I honestly don't think you guys get the exposure you deserve in the Muslim community, and we need to address that, because these are really useful things, not just for Muslims with disability, but for anyone really. It'll be lovely. But there's one specific thing that you guys have done, which we wanted to focus on a little bit today, and it's a very key issue, and that is about inclusion in mosques. And I understand you guys did a survey. So did any one of you want to talk to me a little bit about that, or just introduce that?
Yeah, so our survey looked at how inclusive and accessible our mosques and Islamic centers are. And we kind of the group that we aimed this survey for, it wasn't just individuals with disabilities and special needs, but it was also just for the general Muslim community. We wanted to see if they felt like there was a need, or if they felt like the art centers were inclusive and accessible or not. So we conducted the survey in around summer 2020. So it was just after the COVID pandemic started. And I think this is important because it means that attending mosques and Islamic centers is kind of still fresh in their heads, and they can kind of, remember what it was like attending. We did it on Google Forms. It was very simple and short, and that's how we wanted it to be, because I think it literally takes 2 to 3 minutes to complete. And that's because we knew that that is going to be an important factor if people are going to complete it or not. And we got just over 100 responses. We distributed it via word of mouth and social media. And the question is kind of like different, there's varied question types. So we had some, checkbox questions, and we had an opportunity for people to elaborate on their responses.
Excellent, mashallah. I mean, I want to get to a probably a more basic question first, which is why this survey? Because you could have surveyed, the attitude of Muslims towards disabilities, or whether there's some kind of issues with regards to representation in the healthcare. So why this specific one captured your attention?
So we knew there was a lack of access to different abilities, and we wanted to start the conversation by doing a survey. We let the community around us answer the questions about the survey, so they can think about it, because this topic isn't thought about in our community. We often forget about our brothers and sisters with different abilities, unfortunately, and only these surveys and social media campaigns, etc., that actually make us think about it. And it also gave us we understood from the survey how the community feels about the different abilities in our community and how they're forgotten. So just asking questions about this topic makes the community feel like they're united in a survey, and to find out how they actually feel about other people is important, especially if they have different abilities.
That's a really good point. To be honest, in the last year and a half that we've been working with Muslim organizations that specialize in various disabilities or different abilities, it's one thing that I think everyone agrees on, is that there's something that needs to be looked into more detail. So I'm really glad you guys did this survey. So what were the findings?
Can I also just add to that, is that I think we also felt it was important to actually have some kind of data and present it to people and say, look, it's not just us and our personal experiences, it's something out there that's actually a real problem. So our main findings showed that 76.6% of individuals disagreed or strongly disagreed with the claim that enough was being done by Muslim communities to make their places of worship accessible and inclusive to people of abilities. That's such a long sentence, but basically we have 76.6% of people that think that it's not inclusive and accessible to people with disabilities. So when we looked at the
big number, that's 76.6 is, with any survey, that's pretty big.
Yeah, that is. And the main findings was that, so we looked at also we got the people, wrote in, elaborated on their responses and why they gave that answer. And when we collected all of these and analyzed the data, we found that there was two kind of barriers present. So there was physical barriers, for example, no wheelchair access, okay? And then there was also social barriers. So social barriers in the form of stigma. So things like just ignorance, not knowing about disabilities and special needs, and what kind of arrangements they require, stereotypes, discrimination and prejudice. And all these existed in Islamic places of worship. And what we found was that subtle and unconscious discrimination was reported more often than overt. And this can be sometimes even worse. So when we think of overt forms of discrimination, we're thinking of, for example, going up to someone and telling them, you need to leave, or your child needs to leave, they're making too much noise. But subtle discrimination is something more, it's something that maybe may not be so obvious. So it's something like, for example, and I think me and Fatima was discussing this last time, like, for example, just staring at someone in, when they enter and just staring at them, and that makes them feel uncomfortable. And this has a really, devastating effect. So it has a very, it affects them emotionally, these individuals and their families, and it makes them feel very overwhelmed, and it makes them, not want to attend. And that is the sad reality of it. Many families, many individuals with disabilities and special needs do not attend. And we can't judge them. We can't, I think we have to go forward. We have to take an empathetic approach and, think about it from their perspective. And
Jazakallah khairan. Sister Fatima, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was going to talk about the discrimination and the subtle discrimination. And unfortunately, we do have a subtle discrimination in our community. And once that stops, that's when the first step would be to be able to come with others in our places of worship. So if we can all stop staring at different people, that would be great.
And that's really interesting, because I wouldn't have thought about subtle discrimination, to be honest. I can think of overt, telling someone to get out or get lost, and physical barriers, I imagine, is not lack of access or a lack of thinking about people who may be sensitized with too much sensory overload. Any other physical barriers that you can mention?
Yeah, so we so our next slide sort of talks about this in more detail. And so we have things like the size of the room, okay? Some people who may have, breathing difficulties, if it gets too crowded, they just can't. So we have things like accessible bathrooms, disabled parking spaces, thinking about ventilation, thinking about how heavy the doors are. People who, struggle with motor skills, or, they might find it difficult to even open the door. So simple things like this, which we don't, think of straight away, because we don't experience it and we don't have family members like that, struggle with these difficulties, then it's not something that might come to mind straight away. But I think there are some there are quite a lot of changes that can be made, and we're not expecting all these changes to be made at once, but I think that hopefully the more awareness that is raised, maybe it can start off with the new centers that are being built to be more accessible. And even the simple, some changes are quite simple. And I think this might lead on to your next question, Wajid. Yeah, so just...
The next question being like, what changes can be made?
Yeah.
That's the obvious thing. That if I was running a masjid and I was listening to this, I would say, okay, there seems to be a problem here, but how do I go about fixing it? We've got so many other things on our plate. We've got so little funds. We haven't got the space. We haven't got the resources. But what would you recommend?
Okay, so I think to start off with, and I think this is something that is important to note, is that public places of worship, according to the Equality Act, public places of worship are required by law to make adjustments to reduce all kinds of barriers that disabled individuals might face. And and more importantly, Islam promotes equality. It's clear that a person's righteousness determines a person's status with God, and not their abilities or anything else. And so those with disabilities should be treated with dignity and respect. And therefore, from this point, I would like to propose the idea that we need to take this seriously, and we need to start creating change. And Fatima, do you want to start off with what changes we can make?
Yeah. So we wrote a few ways that we can adapt our mosques and centers. I was thinking, actually, we can provide the child with special needs with earmuffs, but what about the mum? How are we accommodating the mum who wants to listen to the lecture? We can give her headphones to listen to the lecture while the son or the daughter has earmuffs to block out the noise. We can provide subtitles. We can actually give the mum a transcript of the lecture beforehand, in case she wants to just read it while watching the screen, and she can't listen because she wants to concentrate on her child. We can adapt the program for the sure that they feel accommodated. For example, a family can send an email to the center or a mosque beforehand to say, I have this child, I have this adult in my family who has so-and-so a condition, how can you accommodate me? We recently collaborated with an organization last year who had a museum / exhibition, and they asked us for advice on how to accommodate families. Even holding an event where the family come alone just to feel comfortable is important. So raising awareness in organizations around us who are holding events is really important. By doing an olive tree branch and say, how with you, how can you make my family more feel more comfortable in your event? Or I think it's really important as on an individual level. If we want to make a difference, we start on a grassroots level as an individual. If you volunteer for a mosque center, what are you doing as an individual in that mosque center? Are you approaching the organizer? Are you giving them an opportunity to be included in the idea yourself? Maybe they're too worried about funding and choosing who's going to sit on the member, but are we giving them the opportunity to say, I volunteer already with you, but how can I help you make the event more inclusive for that family who needs inclusivity?
Such important points, and I'm really glad that you guys framed it in the way they have, because you've broken it down into different types of areas that there can be improvements in. And I guess it's important to note that what you're describing is it sounds like evolution, not revolution. It's not, everyone is evil, no one, you're not doing this on purpose, but it's much more coming from within the community. It's saying that, look, we're part of the community. Let's educate each other more. Let's think about it, because if you think about it, then you're going to start doing something about it. Let's put it on the agenda, and inshallah, let's move towards these things, because a lot of these things, they don't sound like they're, going to cost £100,000 to do, or 50 volunteers. It's things that can be done, but it requires someone to think about it. We have some questions coming in, so we will come to those questions, inshallah, at the end. And if you're just joining us, we're here with Sister Fatima and Sister Zahra'a from Amanati, who are talking to us a little bit about the work and activity that they do, but also about a survey that they've done about inclusivity within the masjids. And they've really broken it down beautifully about how to improve the inclusivity within the masjids, especially when we talk about physical barriers, social barriers, and unconscious discrimination. Just a question on unconscious discrimination. It's a little bit more difficult for masjids. For example, the masjid can take an effort in some of these areas, the earmuffs, the sensory rooms, and so on and so forth. But it's much more difficult for them to control what the average person in the masjid is doing, whether they're staring or the way they're acting or behaving. Even right now, a lot of them would like people to wear masks, but people are not wearing them. What ideas do you have around that?
So I think, so just to continue with what Palmer's saying, and hopefully to answer your question. So firstly, so she spoke about how we can adapt the programs. This box here, and then we spoke about the physical changes that we can make to our mosques. And I think to answer your question, now this is going to take a much longer time to change. This requires social change. So educating and raising awareness is such an important tool that we require, and that is needed to achieve that change that you're talking about, to overcome this kind of discrimination. So the more courses, workshops, and as we mentioned earlier, for example, Islamic scholars just mentioning it in their lectures, okay, things like that the more we raise awareness, the more understanding people are of special needs and disabilities, and hopefully the less discrimination. So there is a correlation between that, and that's what the research that I've done has shown, that there is a correlation between that, reducing discrimination through raising awareness and educating. And so also, and I think another thing, which is this blue box here, is that giving the disabled individuals and their families a voice, taking a very person-centered approach and putting them in the center and really listening to them, and their voices matter. And And I think the more value we give them that they deserve, the value that they deserve, okay, that's when we also start seeing change, I think. When I see this person paying more attention and really caring and, inviting the individual, when I see that person doing this, and then, it's going to change something within me.
Yeah, inviting them to be part of the committee is important as well. We want to have a diverse committee with different people, but do we include the disabled individual in the committee?
Yeah, no, excellent points. Excellent points. You're right. Every community will have an expert. They might not be able to always get out to some of these organizations, but mashallah, there's so many of them now. But they will have an expert in the form of the family or the person with a disability, because they're expert in themselves. They know what they want and what will make them feel happy and included. So you're right. There's no excuse. We can reach out to them, inshallah. My last-ish question, unless you guys wanted to make another point, or if I missed anything out, was there anything that you found in the survey that was surprising or you weren't expecting?
Fatima, do you want to start?
1 second.
Okay, I'll start. So I think for me, it was, I think just the fact that the sheer number, like you said, of people that thought that our centers were not inclusive, and then the fact that we're not, what have we done about it? Like, if we think it's not inclusive and accessible, why aren't we doing anything about it? That's also something that really stood out to me and made me think, and that motivates me even more in my work at Amanati.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that the survey was actually completed by more than 100 people showed how much people actually cared about this cause. And if people care this much to answer a survey, can we do more about it? What can we do?
Exactly. I'll finish there, and we have some questions in the audience. A lot of good comments from people about comments like, we should get the imams to do a khutbah. I think that's something that MCB can help with, because we get them to do khutbahs on Islamophobia or even on stopping smoking. This is definitely something that we should be doing, inshallah, and educating people on inclusivity, the rights of the disabled, providing a platform for people to speak about their own experiences. It will be, really a great way to learn. And there's people asking for emails and how to get in touch, inshallah, as well. I think there was one of the questions, one of the points was that, like, if you have people in your community who at the moment you want to reach out to and want to get in touch with, is there a way that they can get in touch with yourselves? Is email the best way, or how would you recommend they get in touch so that they can learn more or gain from your experience?
Fatima?
So we have a platform on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook where you can get in touch with us. Essentially, our email is there. We get asked for advice regularly by mums who have special needs children on Instagram DM. So we are just only a DM away from being in touch with us, to be honest.
So it doesn't matter where people are. They don't have to be in London. They can be anywhere that you guys will.
Yeah, literally anywhere around the world.
Alhamdulillah, that's fantastic. This is Zahra?
Yeah, so via Instagram, our Instagram's there. You can see it there. I think we have an email as well. What is the email? Fatima, do you remember? info@amanati.org. Maybe we can write it on the chat.
Yeah, I put it on the chat.
Oh, you put it? Okay.
I've written it already. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're going to make notes of everything that's already on the chat, and hopefully we'll try and accommodate when we are able to, inshallah, in the future.
Jazakallah khairan. There's a question from Brother Abdul. He goes, and if anyone else has any questions, please put it in the chat. How does an Islamic institution assist a vulnerable adult who receives care or is assisted living and is prone to emotional outbursts, such as meltdown, because they're sensory overload or they're confusion? How would you recommend that an Islamic institution, because that could be seen by a masjid as, look, this is something that we need to manage. We don't know why someone is having this outburst. We don't understand it, and that could be again seen as maybe a form of lack of inclusivity. So how do you have any ideas maybe on how we could manage that?
So,
So,
Fatima, yeah, Fatima,
okay.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Shall I go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the best way to accommodate such individuals is to have a one-to-one adult who is experienced and trained and qualified to be with that individual when they are trying to be part of the Islamic institution in education or any otherwise. So it's important that we make sure we have the right accommodating qualified individuals in place before we welcome such individuals. You'll see in a school, they won't let you bring your SEN child in the class unless there is a lady or a man who is qualified in that as a SEN professional to do the one-to-one support. And I'm sure Zahra, from her experience as a Senko in high school, she knows that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it might be hard to actually get an SEN professional. So what we could do is we can pair them with a buddy who's trained, in that area of like how to deal with meltdowns and, personalized training according to his needs. Also, like, what we said about the changes to the environment, which is required in a mosque maybe to be more friendly to his sensory needs. I think that's also important. And maybe having like special days where there's not too much people, having like certain days that is more inviting, welcoming for those with special needs that may not be able to stand too many people, and especially if they're going to have a meltdown, then it won't be appropriate if there's too many people there. So I think those are some of the changes that we can make to accommodate.
Yeah, and just like, sorry to interrupt, but just like Abdul and Zahra have said, that we would work with the carer or the care provider who is bringing individual to the Islamic institution to make sure we accommodate them in a professional way, basically adhering to all their needs.
Jazakallah khair. Last question. Sister Ilham asked a very good question, which is, you've done this survey. Have you been approaching mosques, and if so, what has the reaction been so far?
We have sent emails out and spoken to the leaders of some centers. Generally, we've had some just no responses. We've had some that have been interested and wanting to acquire more. We also do have flyers that we like to distribute around. Fatima, do you want to add anything?
So it's been a positive reaction by the community of the results, but because I think that the pandemic has made it difficult because they haven't been open in most recent times, and only recently the centers and mosques have been open for them to actually think about accommodating different abilities. It's harder because the COVID restrictions were actually the priority. Now slowly things are getting back to normal, but we're not going back to normal. We're going to a different normal, and slowly we will just continue sharing our advice with the leaders and try to make a difference. And obviously we can't do that without volunteers. So if you guys want to join the Amanati, you're more than welcome to help us to make a difference in our mosques and centers.
And can I just add that, whatever change we're going to be able to do, it's going to be minute, and we need like other organizations, and we are working collaboratively with other organizations and with MCB, which we're really, happy about. But we do need, collaborative. We need to work collaboratively. We need to work with bigger organizations like yourselves to make this difference, and so we can see a larger scale difference, hopefully, and change happen. So what we are doing is not as nearly as enough as we would like to do.
You said the last part for me, which is that, mashallah, this is fantastic work. This is fantastic effort, but this is not just your battle to fight alone. We have to do it, and in order to win, in order to bring this change, such a big difference, we want to change the way the Muslim community thinks about disabilities, because in other communities, people who sometimes have these disabilities are the geniuses of those communities, right? They're the ones who discover so many different things. They have got all this talent, and they are a vital part of their community. In our community, who knows how many, you know, Steve Jobs or Alan Turings are lost to the Ummah because they didn't get the accessibility and they didn't get the recognition that they deserve to be really part of this Ummah. Like, this is not, we're acting as a Ummah that isn't a whole Ummah. So in order to you guys are doing the amazing work, just like many other organizations. I think we all need to work together, inshallah. This is not an attack. I think that's a really important thing. It's not, you know, I think some people would have been scared that, oh, this is going to be a bashing of the mosques, you know, mosques don't do this, mosques don't do that. They've heard it all before, but actually this is more an education. It's like, hey, this is an area of improvement. This is a gap, just like you guys found the gap with and made Amanati. This is a gap we found, and we will all work together. This is not just a responsibility of one individual in the committee or whatever. It's a shared responsibility to work together, and that's what we hope as well with the other organizations, inshallah. Next month we're going to have Muslim Deaf UK on with BSL sign interpreters, talking to them, inshallah, and we hope to bring other organizations on. One, so that we can share the good work that you do. For the most important thing is we want all these organizations to really start working together, to know each other like brothers and sisters, because when we're united, inshallah, this change will come. It's inshallah, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the barakah in our work and our effort. Thank you so much to everyone who attended. Thank you to Sister Fatima, Sister Zahra for putting on the survey, but sharing with us the work and the efforts. This video will be on YouTube. And this is just the beginning, inshallah. This is not the end. This is just the beginning. Inshallah, we're going to take it slowly and surely. Each of us, we're going to work together. And please do email Amanati if you want to join, if you want to be part of this, and take it forward. I'll finish with Surah Asr. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal asr. Inna al-insana fi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa salihati wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Take care, everyone. Till next month.
Alaikum assalam. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who attended. Jazakallah khair.